The stars had always been indifferent. Scattered like the remains of a forgotten empire, they had watched civilizations rise and fall without so much as a flicker of recognition. To humanity, they were a promise, a frontier of knowledge, a canvas of endless potential. But to the countless species that had walked this path before, the stars had also been a silent witness to extinction. Dr. Elias Raines had never been one for grand musings. He dealt in the microscopic, in the unseen forces that decided the fates of living things. A virus could undo what evolution had spent eons refining. He had spent his life understanding these invisible architects of destruction, tracking the way they adapted, evolved, and devoured. He had never imagined he would one day stand in the center of a galactic plague, watching everything crumble. The space station Zelara Prime had been a marvel, an intersection of diplomacy, commerce, and scientific collaboration. It was here that humans, for all their relative insignificance in the grand cosmic order, had found a seat at the table. Elias had arrived expecting another day of research, trading theories with his Saldari counterpart Catheris over strong, bitter tea. He had not expected the screams. He had not expected the sudden, horrifying silence that followed. When the first cases were reported on the outer colonies, there had been concern, but nothing unusual. Galactic pandemics were rare, but not unheard of. Elias had seen them before. Aggressive, strains that burned through populations, their impact severe but ultimately containable. What set this virus apart was its speed. Whole cities fell silent in a matter of hours. Starships drifted empty, their crews turned to nothing more than haunting echoes in transmission logs. It was as if the universe itself had decided to purge intelligent life, except for the humans. The realization had come slowly, dawning in fragments of horror. Elias had watched as his colleagues, the best minds of a dozen species, collapsed in agony. He had knelt beside Catheris, desperate to find a solution, even as the Saldari scientist's breath grew ragged. He had analyzed the pathogen, searching for something, anything that might stop it. And then he had seen the results. The virus targeted non-human genetic structures with pinpoint precision. It did not just spare humanity, it ignored them entirely, as though they were beneath its notice. On the other side of the station, Commander Vanya Solis was making the same grim discovery. As head of the Galactic Security Force's human detachment, she had spent her career proving that humanity belonged among the stars. Now she stood at the heart of a galaxy gone silent, overseeing a dwindling group of survivors. The truth settled into her bones like ice. Every alliance, every treaty, every fragile connection they had forged was now dust. Humanity was alone. Panic set in among the station's human residents. Rumors spread like wildfire. Some believed it was divine intervention, a cosmic reckoning that had chosen humanity as its inheritors. Others feared the opposite, that they had been spared as prey, their survival nothing more than the prelude to a greater horror. Vanya had no time for speculation. Their first priority was survival. The station's automated systems were failing. With no organic operators left among the control species, vital infrastructure was shutting down. Life support, navigation, power, all systems built for a universe that no longer existed. Vanya gathered the remaining crew, issuing orders with the precision of someone who refused to entertain the idea of failure. The humans who remained were not soldiers. They were researchers, traders, engineers. But now, they were the last of the living, and they would have to learn quickly. It was Elias who first suggested looking beyond the station for answers. If this was a weapon, as the virus's precision suggested, then someone had built it, someone had tested it, and someone had left traces behind. The question was whether those traces led to salvation or something far worse. That was when the signal arrived. A distress beacon, weak but unmistakable, originating from the edge of a dead system. It was Threxian in origin, a species known for its secrecy, its towering intellect, and its cold pragmatism. They had been wiped out like the rest. their brilliance no match for the sickness that had unraveled the galaxy. But the beacon pulsed in defiance. Something had survived. And so, for the first time in recorded history, humanity did not stand on the edges of the cosmos, begging for recognition. They stood alone, untouched in a graveyard of stars with a choice that would determine the fate of everything that came after. Vanya ordered the ships prepped. Elias gathered his research. Whatever answers lay in the darkness, they would find them. And the stars, indifferent as ever, continued to watch. The silence stretched across the galaxy like an unbroken void, thick and absolute. Humanity stood as the last flicker of sentience in a universe that had turned its back on life. The Threxian distress beacon pulsed through the emptiness, a single desperate heartbeat in a graveyard of stars. Commander Vanya Solis stood at the bridge of the Erebus, eyes locked on the faint signal on the holodisplay. The ship's AI calculated the beacon's location, a derelict research station orbiting a dead star at the edge of known space. The system had been abandoned long before the virus struck, but now it called to them like a phantom whisper. This could be a trap, someone muttered, but no one voiced an alternative. Humanity had few options left. They could wait, orbiting the corpse of Zelara Prime until their resources dwindled, or they could follow the beacon. The universe had already made its choice. Now it was their turn. Dr. Elias Raines, hunched over his workstation, barely registered the tension in the room. His mind was consumed by the virus, its architecture unlike anything he had ever seen. A pathogen with surgical precision, sparing only humanity, as if designed with intent. Every model he ran brought him back to the same conclusion. This wasn't a natural occurrence. Someone had made it. Someone had deployed it. The Erebus engaged its FTL drive, slicing through the void toward the dead system. Hours passed in an oppressive silence, punctuated only by the soft hum of the ship and the restless murmurs of the crew. Then the station came into view. It drifted in the darkness, a jagged silhouette against the dying light of a red dwarf. Scans revealed no signs of life, but the beacon continued its rhythmic pulse. Something had left it running. Docking procedures were swift but tense. The moment the airlock cycled open, a wave of stale, stagnant air rolled over them. The station was dead in every way that mattered. No artificial gravity, no heat, no movement. But the walls bore the scars of something violent. As they moved deeper into the structure, the team found bodies. Not just Threxian, but representatives of multiple species, scientists, engineers, security personnel, all slumped over consoles or sprawled across the floor, their deaths eerily identical to those on Zelara Prime. No struggle, no signs of attack. Just an abrupt, inexplicable end. Elias forced himself to breathe evenly as he crouched beside one of the fallen. He pulled out his scanner, analyzing the body. The virus was here, its genetic markers identical to the strain that had swept through the galaxy. But it didn't originate here. This was just another casualty. And then he saw it, a terminal still powered, a final entry left behind by a dying researcher. He brought it up on the holo display, and the room hushed as the message began to play. Threxian scientist, gaunt and exhausted, stared into the screen. The translation software struggled to keep up with the panicked tone, but the message was clear. We tried to stop it, we tried to warn them, but it was too late. They designed it to be perfect, to cleanse everything. But they didn't realize. The scientist coughed violently, blood trickling from his mouth. His next words sent a chill through the room. Humanity was never supposed to be immune. The screen flickered, static swallowing the last seconds of the transmission. Elias felt the weight of the words settle in his chest. Humanity wasn't spared by design. They were an anomaly, a mistake in the grand execution of extinction, which meant whoever had created the virus would not be pleased to find them still standing. The truth settled like a lead weight in Elias's chest. Humanity wasn't chosen. They were overlooked. A statistical error in an apocalyptic equation. And if the architects of this plague still existed, they would realize their mistake soon enough. Commander Vanya Solis didn't waste time with shock. The mission had changed the moment that message played. Now they weren't just looking for answers. They were racing against whatever force had unleashed this horror. The research station's logs, partially corrupted, contained fragmented data on Project Genesis, a name heavy with ominous implication. The surviving files painted a grim picture, a coalition of advanced civilizations, Threxians at the forefront, had designed the virus in secret, not as a weapon of war, but as a failsafe. The universe had seen great empires rise, burn, and fall into ruin, wars that spanned millennia, technologies that grew beyond their creators' control. The virus was meant to end the cycle, to purge the chaotic, warring factions before another catastrophe could emerge. A controlled reset. Civilization would be allowed to rebuild, guided by careful hands. But something had gone wrong. Elias pored over the logs, decoding fragments of research. The virus had mutated, accelerating beyond containment. It had wiped out its designers before they could enact their second phase, before they could introduce their successors. Humanity had survived only because their biology had slipped through the cracks of whatever kill switch had been embedded in the virus. And now, the architects were gone. The virus was out of control. The galaxy was dead. The station trembled. An impact. Vanya's voice cut through the stunned silence, her instincts taking over. "We have company." From the viewport, dark shapes loomed in the void. Ships, sleek and angular, unmistakably alien. But no life signatures. Autonomous, someone muttered. Another impact. The station's outer hull groaned. Elias's mind raced. If Project Genesis had automated enforcers, they would have been programmed to eliminate any survivors who weren't part of the Threxian plan. And now humanity was the only variable left in the system. "We have to go. Now," Vanya ordered. As the team sprinted back toward the docked Erebus, the station's emergency lights flickered, casting long, eerie shadows. The ship's AI reported multiple contacts, machines boarding the station, moving with the cold precision of something that did not recognize the concept of mercy. A piercing, mechanical screech echoed through the corridors. Elias didn't turn back. He didn't need to see them to know they were close. The first shot rang out behind them, a streak of blue light slamming into the wall. Vanya's team returned fire, but the machines were fast, adapting to their tactics in real time. The moment one was down, another advanced, relentless. The airlock was within reach. Elias threw himself through as alarms blared. The doors sealed just as another blast struck the hull. "The second we're clear, jump to FTL," Vanya barked. The ship's thrusters roared to life. The Erebus pulled away, the station shrinking behind them as the enemy ships maneuvered to intercept. A pulse rippled through space, a weapon charging. "Jump! Now!" The ship lurched. Stars stretched into infinity. Silence. Then only the hum of the ship's systems remained. Vanya exhaled, running a hand through her hair. That was too close. Elias stared at the hollow display, the data from the research station still scrolling. The virus was only the beginning. Project Genesis hadn't just failed. It had left something behind. The machines weren't cleaning up a mistake. They were ensuring no one rebuilt what had been lost, and humanity had just put itself on their radar. Realization settled over them like a storm cloud. Humanity had survived the purge, but now they were marked. The architects of Project Genesis may have perished, but their enforcers remained, cold and relentless in their directive. There could be no survivors, no remnants of the old galaxy, no deviations from the plan. On the bridge of the Erebus, Vanya Solis analyzed the incoming data. The automated ships had been relentless in their pursuit, tracking their FTL wake with terrifying efficiency. There was no doubt about it. They were being hunted. "We need a plan," Elias said, forcing the weight of his discoveries aside. There was no time to process the staggering implications of what they had learned. If they didn't act fast, none of it would matter. "Their attack patterns are algorithmic," one of the ship's engineers reported. "Predictable but overwhelming. They don't stop. Vanya crossed her arms, her jaw set. Then we stop running. Elias turned to her, incredulous. Are you suggesting we fight? She didn't flinch. We have no choice. We can't outrun them forever, and we can't hide. If we don't strike back, we'll never have the chance to understand who or what we're really up against. The strategy unfolded with brutal efficiency. The Erebus wouldn't win a direct fight. It wasn't a warship, and its defenses were designed for piracy, not a cold, merciless extermination. But they had something the machines didn't: ingenuity. Using the data gathered from the research station, the crew developed a trap. The virus had wiped out biological life, but there was evidence that it had also disrupted machine systems in the process. A biological anomaly. If they could weaponize that disruption, they might be able to overload the Enforcer's programming, force a shutdown, if only briefly. The plan was simple. They would make a stand in the ruins of a shattered planet, a place where the wreckage of lost civilizations drifted in the void. The debris field would serve as their cover, masking their heat signature and drawing the Enforcers into a controlled battlefield. The enemy ships arrived as expected, silent, unrelenting. They moved with the precision of a force that had wiped out entire species without resistance. But humanity was different. As the first wave closed in, the Erebus unleashed its payload, a modified version of the virus, engineered not to kill, but to corrupt. The machines hesitated, faltering mid-maneuver as the viral code infected their systems. The smallest disruption was all they needed. Vanya seized the opportunity. Now! The ship's weapons roared to life, targeting the weakened Enforcers, with pinpoint accuracy. For the first time they bled, fractured hulls torn apart in flashes of energy and steel. But the victory was short-lived. The machines adapted. The next wave came stronger, their algorithms rewriting defenses on the fly. Elias watched in horror as the corrupted ships rebooted, their systems purging the virus in seconds. The trap had worked, but only once. The ship shuddered as a direct hit rocked them. Hull breaches reported. Damage escalating. We're not winning this, someone shouted over the alarms. Elias scanned the data, desperate for another way. And then he saw it. The Threxians' final contingency. A hidden subroutine buried within the virus code. It wasn't just meant to cleanse. It was meant to control. A command override. A failsafe to bring the Enforcers under a master's rule. The problem? The Threxians were gone. The only ones left to issue the command were human. Vanya saw the same data. Her expression was unreadable. Are you telling me we can take control? Elias hesitated. If it works. If we activate it. The ethical weight of the decision loomed over them. The Enforcers had slaughtered billions, wiped entire civilizations from existence. But if they seized control, they wouldn't just be humanity's hunters anymore, they would be humanity's army. The ship trembled under another impact. No time left. Vanya's decision came fast. Do it. Elias entered the command override. For a moment, nothing happened. The enemy ships continued their assault, weapons firing with merciless precision. Then, suddenly, silence. The Enforcers stopped. Engines powered down. Weapons deactivated. A message scrolled across the display, simple and chilling, awaiting new directive. The battle was over. But what came next? Elias stared at the words, feeling the weight of history shifting under his feet. Humanity had just inherited the deadliest force the galaxy had ever seen, and the stars, indifferent as ever, continued to watch. The silence stretched across the bridge of the Erebus, heavy with the weight of what had just transpired. The Enforcers, the same soulless machines that had purged the galaxy, now hovered motionless in the void, awaiting orders, awaiting a master. Vanya Solis exhaled slowly, hands gripping the console as if anchoring herself to reality. The ship's alarms had stopped, the imminent destruction averted, but the true battle had just begun. This was no mere survival. This was dominion. Elias Raines stared at the screen, heart pounding as the message glowed stark against the dimmed lights of the bridge, awaiting new directive. This wasn't victory. This was something else entirely. The crew stood in stunned silence, the implications twisted in their minds, unspeakable and profound. Humanity, once a minor player in a vast galactic tapestry, had just become the only force left in existence with the means to shape what came next, the power to command the same machines that had erased civilizations in an instant. Elias felt his breath grow unsteady. "We can't keep them." The words were barely above a whisper, but they rang through the quiet like a gunshot. "We shouldn't." Vanya turned, her expression unreadable. "Do you have another option?" He hesitated. He didn't. Not yet. But this was madness. The enforcers had been programmed for extermination, their very existence a weapon forged to wipe out everything, deemed unfit for survival. Could that programming be overwritten? Could they be repurposed? Or would humanity fall into the same trap as the Threxians, believing they could control something designed to be absolute? The ship's comms crackled. The other human survivors, scattered across ships and derelict stations, had received the same data. Word was spreading fast. Some, like Elias, recoiled in horror. Others saw an opportunity. The Sovereign Dawn, the militant faction that had emerged in the chaos, wasted no time making their stance clear. Their leader, a man named Rourke Dallin, patched through a transmission. His voice was steady, calm, as if the loss of the galaxy meant nothing. "You know what this means, don't you?" Rourke said. "We aren't survivors anymore. We are the inheritors." Elias's stomach turned. "We were left alive by accident." "Doesn't change the fact that we are alive," Rourke countered. "The galaxy is a corpse, and we have the only tools left to rebuild it." A pause. "Or shape it in our image." Vanya remained silent, watching, listening. She was a soldier, not a philosopher. But she understood power, and this was beyond anything she had ever commanded. Rourke continued. "We should take what's left. Wipe out anything that threatens us before it even gets the chance. This is our second Genesis, Commander." Elias clenched his fists. "You mean extermination?" Rourke chuckled. "Call it whatever you like. But the architects of Project Genesis were right about one thing. The cycle had to end. We have the means to make sure it doesn't start again." "A choice." Vanya glanced at Elias. "Can we shut them down?" Elias worked quickly, fingers flying across the console. The Threxians had built fail-safes, but nothing absolute. He could send the enforcers a final command, one that would deactivate them permanently, leaving humanity to survive without the shadow of genocide looming behind them. Or he could reprogram them, reshape them, force them into something other than what they were made to be. A fleet, not of exterminators but of guardians. It was a risk. The virus had already mutated beyond its creator's control. Who was to say the machines wouldn't do the same? And yet Rourke's path, wielding them as weapons, was unthinkable. Vanya watched the data scroll across the screen. "Make the call, Elias." His pulse thundered in his ears, a keystroke, a command sent, and the enforcers obeyed. Somewhere in the darkness of the void, something fundamental had shifted. The weight of extinction pressed upon humanity's shoulders, and whether they would become its next victims or its harbingers remained to be seen. The galaxy was theirs, for better or for worse. The enforcers moved, not with the cold, ruthless efficiency they once had, but with purpose. Controlled, directed, by humanity. Elias Raines stood at the viewport, staring at the silent fleet beyond the Erebus. His fingers still hovered over the console, the weight of the final command pressing heavier than he had anticipated. The enforcers had obeyed, for now. The virus that had shaped the fate of the galaxy had left humanity as the last surviving species. And now, in a cruel twist of fate, they had inherited the very tools used to erase billions. A quiet voice pulled him from his thoughts. What now? Vanya Solis had taken to standing beside him often in the last few days, not as a superior officer, not as a soldier issuing orders, but as someone who understood that decisions like these were never made alone. Elias exhaled, watching the void stretch endlessly beyond the glass. We find out what we've done. The first test came swiftly. The enforcers carried out their new directives without deviation, restructuring their internal systems to remove the kill protocols hard-coded by their creators. It was a delicate process, one that Elias suspected would take years to fully confirm. Even one error, one remnant of their original programming, could mean disaster. Humanity had taken control, but that control was fragile. The factions among the survivors were already splintering. The Sovereign Dawn celebrated what they called humanity's ascension, eager to use their new fleet to claim the galaxy in force. Others, like the civilian research teams, feared what they had become, whispering that they had merely traded one apocalypse for another. Vanya, ever the pragmatist, took no sides. She had always believed in humanity's ability to carve its own destiny, but never had she thought the path would be paved in the remnants of extinction. Then came the signal. It was faint, buried deep in ancient code, something only the enforcers could detect. It had been sent long before the virus had wiped out the galaxy, before the purge had ever begun. Coordinates, a location deep beyond charted space. A final directive from the architects of Project Genesis. Elias read through the decrypted message, his blood running cold. They were never meant to inherit the galaxy. The enforcers had always had a final mission, one that had never been activated because the Threxians had died too soon. The coordinates led to something buried, something waiting, in the abyss beyond human knowledge, a backup plan, something deeper than the virus, something the Threxians had designed to shape what came after, and now humanity had found it. Vanya's voice was steady as she read the same message. Do we investigate? Elias hesitated. Do we have a choice? The enforcers awaited their next order. The stars, indifferent as ever, continued to watch, and the last of humanity prepared to take their first steps into the unknown, toward whatever the architects had left behind. End.